When Tobias and Melinda adopt a Doberman dog named Rascal, they are somewhat hesitant at first. How would this dog do with their young daughter, Aleida? Before we start our story, smash the like button, make sure to subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any new stories. The first 5 days go relatively well, but then one night, Tobias is awoken by a scream coming from inside his house, inside his daughter's room. Something is going on, and Rascal has something to do with it. There is no doubt about it. Tobias had shot awake in the middle of the night. He knew that he heard something, a scream. What could possibly be going on? His wife was still laying beside him, so it could not have been her. It couldn't be, right? Not his daughter, Aleida. What was that scream? When walking around the dark house, Tobias did not see his new Doberman Rascal anywhere. He had been sleeping at the bottom of the stairs ever since he got here 5 days ago, but not today. Where was he? What the hell was going on? Tobias swung open the door to Aleida's room, and when he saw what was going on in there, he dropped the baseball bat he had brought with him. He could not believe it. But what did Tobias encounter in Aleida's room? Whose scream had woken him up, and with his Doberman Rascal have to do with all this? Rascal was a Doberman dog raised to guard, protect, and fight off attackers from his owner and their house at large. His training was meant to make him a ruthless dog, but Rascal could never learn the art of being a brutal guard dog no matter how hard his owner trained him. But his owner never lost faith in his training regimen until one fateful evening when the owner was robbed. The thief had gained entrance to the house by breaking the window right beside Rascal's cage. Rascal had been too busy munching away at his dinner that he had ignored the sound. Infuriated, the Doberman's owner brought him into an animal shelter. Unlike Rascal's owner, the animal shelter's employees grew to love the dog. Although it took poor Rascal a while to get over his past maltreatment and adjust to his new homely environment. Having adjusted fully and learned to trust humans, he was finally ready to have his own home. However, after 1.5 years, Rascal was still stuck in the shelter. Nobody wanted to adopt him, and this broke the hearts of the animal shelter employees who cared and loved him all this while. Sadly, none of them could afford to take him in, knowing all too well that the reason why Rascal couldn't find a home was because of his history, raised to be ruthless, and his intimidating size. The employees took it upon themselves to let potential owners know just how amazing and wonderful Rascal was, so they set out to demystify the Doberman Rascal. The employees started by telling their immediate circle about Rascal. They shared sweet tales of the Doberman dog and how he was different from other dogs raised to be ruthless. They didn't leave out the story of how his inability to be a true guard dog made his owner give him up. But that wasn't enough. They needed more people to hear about him, and one of the employees suggested putting up flyers of Rascal around the neighborhood. This they did, and not quite long, a new family looking to adopt a dog picked interest in Rascal. The new family was also quite resistant, especially because of their newborn baby girl. The shelter workers soon got to work and did their best to convince Tobias and his wife Monica that Rascal was friendly and their daughter Aleida would be safe around him. Not fully convinced but quite optimistic, Tobias and his wife decided to give Rascal a shot. If he was half as good as they said, then he deserved a home. The adoption process was smooth and fast, and Tobias was glad about it. He had a few tales about how tiring the process could be sometimes, but here he was, having a smooth sailing process, and he decided to bring Aleida to the shelter for a visit. He was partly curious to see how Rascal would behave around their baby. Tobias held the sleeping Aleida and brought her near the excited Doberman's cage. Rascal sniffed the baby girl and wagged his tail excitedly as Tobias watched him closely to see if there was any sign of aggression. There was none, and this eased the new family's worry, and they couldn't wait to take him home. Thankfully, they didn't have to wait for long. The animal shelter workers were able to finish up the adoption process that same day. Tobias could barely calm Rascal down when he was let out of his cage, and Rascal couldn't stop himself from jumping excitedly. Tobias felt the leash he was given and wondered if it was strong enough to hold Rascal down if need be. Having calmed the huge dog down, Tobias opened the door of the car and let him hop in. As they drove back home, the new family couldn't help but notice that their excited Doberman didn't seem so excited anymore. They attributed his now nervous state to him not being used to cars, or perhaps some sort of car-related PTSD. However, Rascal's attitude didn't change even when they got home. He still acted edgily, and this worried Tobias so much that he had to place a call to shelter. The dog he had picked up was nothing like the dog who was currently in his living room. This dog was different, with the only similarities being their physical features. However, the shelter employee who was on the phone with him readily assured him that Rascal was just being cautious and nervous. He had been living in the shelter for the past 1.5 years and barely had any form of interaction with other humans outside the shelter. They just needed to give him a little time to adjust to his new home. Tobias agreed with the employee. It made sense for anyone to act a little bit apprehensive when in a new place, and most especially with unfamiliar faces. Thus, it made sense to give Rascal enough time to get used to having a home, but when he wouldn't go up the stairs, Tobias felt at a loss. The family did everything they could to convince him to go up the stairs, but Rascal didn't budge. He sat at the edge of the stairs looking straight ahead. Rascal's new family found this strange, and even when they tried using treats and toys, the Doberman still refused to move an inch towards the stairs. Seeing that there was nothing they could do, the family let the Doberman be and considered it a good thing, as they didn't have to worry about Aleida's safety with the dog. They figured that by the time he was ready to go up the stairs, he would have gotten quite used to Aleida and everyone else. Moreover, they also didn't have to stay up at night to keep an eye on him lest something went terribly wrong, so they let him be. As the days went by, Tobias and Monica tried to befriend Rascal and get him to be comfortable around them, but this didn't work as smoothly as they imagined. They kept an eye on him each time he was with Aleida, but every time he proved to them that he was careful and gentle. However, this was also his general disposition to anything in the house, including them. He wasn't as playful as they'd like, and he was also quite difficult to take for walks. Tobias had noticed that he was only nice to people and dogs bigger than him, and since most of his walks happened at the park, Rascal was bound to run across many dogs who were obviously not bigger than him. To such dogs, he was mean and was ready to bark all night and day. Hence, he was always on a leash whenever Tobias took him for a walk. Also, Monica couldn't take him for walks because of this aggressive behavior. They were quite scared that Monica might not be able to hold him down in such a scenario, so it was Tobias who took up the task of taking him for walks.